Everyone needs to know the story behind their food. At the moment, it's not a very good story. The good news is that farming, having been part of the problem for most of my farming lifetime, could become part of the solution. The future of humanity depends on our capacity to live and be in harmony with nature. We need to bridge this disconnect that we all feel from nature, which has become embedded in all the food systems of the world. My name is Patrick Holden. I'm the founder and chief executive of the Sustainable Food Trust. I'm a practicing farmer on a 300-acre mixed organic dairy farm in West Wales. I've been farming long enough to remember a time when farming was working in harmony with nature. What I remember is large numbers of people working on the land, a profusion of insects, birds, butterflies, small mammals in the fields, not just around the edges of the fields, and food systems which were largely regional or local. And during my farming lifetime, that has completely transformed. Now we have globalized and highly industrial and extractive food systems. If you fly over the world, you'll find that nearly all the habitable land area, which isn't urbanized, is producing food. It's farmed. And farms, due to the industrial and extractive period of agriculture, have become part of the problem in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, the loss of biodiversity, which used to coexist with food production, and a whole range of negative social impacts, especially on public health. We had the emergence of chemical fertilizers and pesticides and government subsidies, in the combination of which enabled us to intensify, and farmers were given guaranteed pricing. That meant they could grow as much food as possible using these chemical inputs, which we now realize were extractive. We didn't know then. And then that heralded in the era of cheap food. We've dined out on nature's bank. And now we find ourselves in a situation where the soil fertility has declined to critical levels, and we need to rediscover our relationship with the world in which we find ourselves. And of course, we need to do that through the prism of agriculture. What is the big vision for regenerative agriculture? Regenerative farming is building soil fertility, reinstating lost biodiversity, and building public health. Everything in nature is connected, and although there is competition, it somehow seems to find this equilibrium, and regenerative agriculture of the future needs to mimic the ecosystems of nature, including animals, which are a vital part of those systems. Regenerative farming systems are by definition diverse. So on a farm of 1,000 acres in England, for instance, you will need to move from a monoculture of just a few crops and return to mixed farming, where livestock play a crucial role in rotational systems which build soil fertility. The most important question of our time is, can we feed the world if we have a transition to regenerative farming systems which is scaled across the planet? And the honest answer is that we don't yet know, but the important point is that there's no choice. If we're going to deal with the challenges of climate change, loss of nature, and declining public health, we have to move into this future, which is farming in harmony with nature. What is the principal barrier to a transition to regenerative agriculture? Is probably money, it's finance. Businesses are key to this agricultural transition because they hold the strings for the money, the policy, the sourcing practices. And at the moment, food pricing is dishonest. It doesn't reflect the damage done to climate, the damage done to nature, the social damage. All the big food companies and retailers need to work together in a pre-competitive spirit so that one of them is not disadvantaged against others who carry on producing or sourcing food which has come from extractive agriculture. There are ways in which I believe we can deal with the problem of food becoming more expensive. And a good example of that would be if farmers are paid for their carbon, for their biodiversity, and for their social positive impacts, and that becomes a new income stream, a third income stream for farmers, then the necessity to charge a premium for the product reduces. How can we ensure that the farming systems that need to replace the ones we've got at the moment are delivering? The answer is measure the impacts, and not just on climate, but also on nature and social consequences. The Sustainable Food Trust has developed a framework, the Global Farm Metric, which looks at the impact of different farming practices on climate, nature, and social outcomes. And that way we have a common language, so actually financing the agricultural transition in an effective way which builds trust amongst the public and governments depends completely on the development of a harmonised way of measuring sustainability impacts. The two can't exist without each other. How can regenerative agriculture be scaled? We need a combination of enabling policy, adequate finance, and informed public opinion. Throughout human history, there's been a cycle of extractive systems, Easter Island, the Mayan civilization. You can look right back through history and see examples of where farming practices have degraded soil fertility and been oblivious of the consequences until it was almost too late. We're in another of those last chance saloons today, and we need to learn from history. We can move to regenerative farming systems, we can apply them at scale, and we can adapt them to the unique climate and ecosystems of every country on the planet, but we need to get on with it.